Hello, everybody. I hope you've all had an enjoyable week so far. My video discussion board is about two restaurateurs in the late 19th century who owned an oyster restaurant in eastern Pennsylvania, and their names were Jacob Garren and Harry Sipe. Jacob Garren was born in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and he moved with his family to New Jersey, where his dad was a carpenter. Jacob joined the 15th Regiment from New Jersey during the Civil War and was discharged on June 7th, 1863 due to a disability, but I don't know what that disability is. So Jacob owned an oyster bar in the basement of a building on Lens Court in eastern Pennsylvania, and Jacob Garren became Easton's pioneer oyster dealer. The business grew so big that he outgrew the space on Lens Court. He moved the business around the corner and started his own restaurant. And you can see the picture there in the middle of his actual restaurant. In the 19th century, oysters were extremely popular, from street vendors to restaurants and saloons. From the East Coast to the West Coast, oysters were all the rage. Americans ate them raw, steamed, canned, fried, even pickled. Oysters were in abundance, and this made them very cheap. All Americans could afford them, and they were cheaper than ground beef, and were as popular then as hamburgers and french fries are today. In 1898, a local newspaper felt it worthy to note that Garren's, a popular oyster bar, received a single shipment of 185,000 oysters. It was reported to be the largest number of oysters ever received in the city at one time. And during this period also, the average American was eating 660 oysters a year. So with the popularity of the oyster, Garren's Oyster House couldn't help but succeed. Jacob Garren eventually received his liquor license and was the first in the city to use tablecloths and napkins. Jacob Garren was known as a tough employer, but he was also very kind to his employees. And when the oyster season was over, he would take all of his staff for the summer to Lake Hopatong in New Jersey. It was here that his employee Harry Sipe met Garren's daughter Belle, and they were soon married. When Jacob Garren died, Harry Sipe became the proprietor and changed the name to Sipe's Cafe. And Sipe proved to be a great restaurant owner. He was known to be a gracious host. He made everyone feel comfortable. His business philosophy was simple: the best in food and the best in service. Sipe's Cafe was famous for its delicious food and coffee. Everything was made to order and from scratch. Oyster stews were a popular item, and a patron would watch his oysters being opened, carry them to the kitchen, and see them put into a pan. And when the stew was finished, then he would carry it back to his own table. Restaurants in the 19th century often had separate men and women's dining rooms. Only men were allowed to drink alcohol, and it was thought that the women needed their own dining room to avoid rude looks and vulgar language. And so they were usually on the second floor and often would enter through a separate door. And you can see the pictures below at Sipes, who had the two different dining rooms. Sipes Cafe also made oyster dinner deliveries, and today we have multiple ways to have food delivered, but back at the end of the 1800s, most restaurants did not do this. But Sipes would have an order come in, and the oysters would then be delivered by waiters, and they would do it on a rush basis in a horse-drawn wagon. So Garren and Sipes Cafe had become an institution in eastern Pennsylvania, and when electricity arrived, the cafe was outlined in lights, including the windows. They had 6 dining rooms inside that were always kept busy. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information as to what became of the restaurant. We do know that Garren's son eventually left the area and was a laborer on the railroad in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and his daughter Belle divorced Harry Sipe. And as an added note, Jacob Garren was my third great grandfather. I hope you all have enjoyed this. Have a great day.